What's good? It's your boy Fanon. I'm going to cover this, talk a little bit more specifically about this Canelo Alvarez positive test for a banned substance and the reaction that the WBA and the WBC had by pretty much proclaiming that he was innocent. And also talk about Victor Conte. You know, I'm sure people know who Victor Conte is. He's an expert on performance-enhancing drugs and specifically he was involved in a Balco controversy and it helped people had helped people cheat for a long time, man. It's it's a world-renowned expert in that matter. And also, you know, the different treatment that you see with specifically the WBA in the way that it handled the incident with Luis Ortiz and the way that they're, you know, handling it with Canelo Alvarez. Now, with that said, man, you know, please hit the subscribe and the bell icon because we really do have very good live streams where you have a chance to have real live interaction, real-time interaction with me to ask questions you want to hear. I also get to talk to you and see your questions and what you think. And, you know, that's one of the things I really want to do on this channel. So if at all possible, you know, do that and, you know, and enjoying the conversation. Just last night, man, and my shout out to Jabal, who's a subscriber to the channel, who left a message and said he was a little bit offended by some of the comments that took place in a very good live stream that we had. We had a panel with the LDBC. And, you know, so when I invite people on the channel, man, they get to speak their mind. They, mi casa is su casa. And, you know, but if somebody says something that offended you, I apologize that you were but I don't think that it was delivered in the manner which you thought. But I'm going to acknowledge your concerns about that, man, and tell you, man, that you're more than welcome to come onto the channel and share your thoughts and opinions on the matter. So my shout out to you, Jabro, and I hope you send me an email and we get to talk about that. Now that said, let me go through these as I usually do. You know, actually what is said, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. There's an article came out early this morning. The WBC and the WBA back Canelo in test controversy. He's innocent. It's by Manuel Rivera. The headlines have exploded from the moment it was revealed that Canelo Alvarez had tested positive for trace levels of a banned drug, Clenbuterol. The Mexican superstar was backed by the World Boxing Council and the World Boxing Association, two of the sanctioning bodies involved in this upcoming fight. Golden Boy Promotions confirmed via a news release that Canelo provided a positive sample as part of the voluntary testing program he requested ahead of his rematch with Gennady Golovkin at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on May 5th. Golden Boy's statement added that Daniel Eschner, the director of sports medicine research in a test laboratory who conducts the test, said via a letter, these values are within the range of what is expected from meat contamination. The first bout between Canelo and Golovkin ended in a contentious draw. WBC World President Mauricio Suleiman believes the boxer is innocent. We're going to follow the same line that we've taken in each of the positives for other boxers who tested positive for Clenbuterol. We will follow the protocol and we will work with the boxing commission where the fight will take place to get to the bottom of things, said Suleiman to ESPN Deportes. In a superficial way, as far as we know about Clenbuterol, because of the level found and with the clean record of Canelo, who has been part of the program of the voluntary anti-doping agency for 4 years, had never tested positive, and considered that the problem of Clenbuterol is a public health issue. Everything indicates that it is food contamination. Gilberto Mendoza, the president of the WBA, is also backing Canelo with this problem. I believe in Canelo's innocence. He has always shown himself to be a clean athlete. It seems that the issue of Clenbuterol is a common problem in Mexico, and on some occasions, a sister organization like the WBC has had to study this problem more often in the past, and I think we'll have much more experience in this regard, and we'll have much more experience in this regard. I know that it is within the levels that are reflected by the consumption of contaminated meat, and as I've been able to read, that he will undergo any test, and if it maintains that, then the WBA will be on Canelo's side with doors wide open, as we've always done. We are going to have a big fight on May 5th. This will add a bit of drama to the fight. I know the fight will continue, and we'll agree to establish additional protocols, although this procedure is led by VADA, and there should be no problems. The Nevada State Athletic Commission is yet to make an official ruling on the status of the rematch. Okay, now before I give you my comments on this, just blatant hypocrisy and attempt to sweep this under the rug on a very let me give you Victor Conte's, a professional cheater. This is, when you're talking about Victor Conte, you're talking about somebody, when you're saying, like, how do you break into a bank? Are you going to ask the bank manager, or are you going to ask somebody that robs banks for a living? Well, since we listened to the bank manager, let's, the guy who's paid to count money, let's talk to the guy who's paid to cheat. Victor Conte reacts to Canelo testing positive for clenbuterol. Victor Conte, a well-known authority on anti-doping and CEO of SNAC Systems, chimed in on a recent drug testing controversy hovering over the head of two-division world champion Saul Canelo Alvarez. On Monday, it was revealed by Golden Boy that Canelo had tested positive for trace amounts of clenbuterol, which the boxer believes was the direct result of contaminated meat. Getting to what I just continue to go. The Mexican superstar has been training for a May 5th rematch with IBO, WBA, WBC middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. A voluntary drug test showed Canelo had trace amounts of the drug in his system, and Golden Boy Promotions said in a statement Monday it was consistent with meat contamination, and that all of these were within the range of meat contamination. So Conte gives his take on the growing controversy. This is what Victor Conte has to say. Clenbuterol is a very potent and effective performance-enhancing drug that would certainly help a boxer, said Conte to the Las Vegas Review. Canelo and Golovkin fought 6 months ago. What have they been doing since then? For 4 months, they had a green light to do whatever they wanted. Here, we end up with this dog ate my homework type of an excuse, and everybody thinks Canelo was doing drugs. It is plausible that he did not intentionally cheat. Nobody can say for sure if there was intent or not. He could have used clenbuterol 3 months ago, and there still be traces in his blood, or he could have had eaten tainted meat. But these are multi-million-dollar athletes. I'd be shipping in fresh meat from somewhere other than Mexico. They had to know that this was a possibility. So basically, what Victor Conte's saying is that you don't know. You don't know. Because, number one, because first of all, Canelo Alvarez has more than enough money, seeing as he's made $8 million in the last $10 million in his last fight, to get some steaks and some meat shipped in from Texas. And if you allow this type of excuse, then you're basically saying that anybody that lives in Mexico, anybody that's a Mexican athlete, has a built-in masking agent that we're going to say is okay, when you can actually use the drug itself to mask the use of the drug. Because if you do it 3 months before in training and building yourself up, then you're okay as long as it gets kind of out of your system, because there's a meat contamination issue in Mexico. So for them to say that they know of his innocence, they don't know of his innocence. They're hoping for his innocence. But the fact of the matter is, it's in his system. It's in his system. And the thing that stands out to me the most, well, not the most, one of the other things that stand out to me is, what is this with Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions being the ones that get to tell everybody it happened? You get to announce, you get to have your own press conference with everything set up and ready to go, your excuse all built in. When we hear about it, we get the explanation for it at the same time. That sounds funny to me. This is not a situation like Luis Nery where it's the WBA that announces it, or it's VADA that announces it. It was Golden Boy that announced it with a ready-made letter in his hand for it. That smells like, if nothing else, that people are going out of their way for Canelo Alvarez to make sure that this thing was presented as in as positive a light as possible for Canelo Alvarez. And that's my issue with it. I don't know whether or not you very well could have something in your system because, you ate some meat in Mexico and now it's in your system. And hey, it's a public health issue. Okay, well, what about other things? What about excuses where people say, hey, my mother cooked me some food and I didn't know that there was, they were going to have uncastrated meat from an uncastrated bull. And it had elevated levels of testosterone in it because my mother made it for me. Or, it was there was a shipment that went out in Texas and, I didn't test my steak. And you don't have Golden Boy and everybody negotiating with the WBA and the WBC, getting your notes ready, getting all the conversation going, making sure everybody knows what's going on is clean. And this isn't some Floyd Mayweather Jr. after the fact type stuff where that stuff. And if that happened with Floyd Mayweather Jr., then Floyd Mayweather Jr. should have got in trouble as well. So, all this, people that you come into the comment section or have comments about, well, what about Floyd? Because that's a conversation. That's what I've heard like on several comments. Like, who cares? Well, let's talk about Floyd's. No, Floyd's not fighting on May 5th. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is a retired boxer. I don't want to talk about Floyd Mayweather Jr. I don't want to talk about Roy Jones. I don't want to talk about Manny Pacquiao. I don't want to talk about any of them because they're not the ones fighting on May 5th. Canelo Alvarez is the one fighting on May 5th. And if it turns out that Floyd Mayweather Jr. gets, is publicly announces in the lead up to one of his next fights that he tested positive for anabolic steroids or something like that, but hey man, somebody slipped something in my drink. It's akin to what Ben Johnson said. When he got I just don't want to hear it, man. The issue at hand is Canelo Alvarez. Now, as far as the WBA goes, and just the blatant hypocrisy here, and all that now, it's all kumbaya between the WBA and the WBC, because I could have sworn that Luis Ortiz was the WBA mandatory for Anthony Joshua, and that he tested positive for something where a doctor gave him an excuse, right? That it was his high blood pressure medication that had him test positive. And the WBC said, we agree with the doctor. The fight can continue. What did the WBA do to Luis Ortiz? They stripped him. They stripped him of his number one ranking and his mandatory status for Anthony Joshua. So I'm confused here. Why would you, in this circumstance with Canelo Alvarez, why is it kumbaya because the WBC says it's good? It's good. But when the WBC said it was good with Luis Ortiz, no, the WBA, no, it's not good. We don't want him in our rankings. Why could that possibly be? Maybe because Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, or Eddie Hearn doesn't want him in your rankings. And you're going to make a lot of money off of Anthony Joshua fights, which is why you let Anthony Joshua duck out of fighting Luis Ortiz or avoid Luis Ortiz when Ortiz was the number one mandatory. So, I can't tell you for sure whether or not Canelo Alvarez, what took performance enhancing drugs. All I can tell you is for sure that I know when I'm looking at what this note says, it says he has clenbuterol in his system. He has a performance enhancing drug in his system. All of that other talk is sideways. He's got performance enhancing drugs in his system. Now, whether the fight continues and whether Gennady Golovkin is willing to continue with the fight, and whether the WBA and the WBC are willing to continue to sanction their champion, their potential champion being somebody that tested positive for performance enhancing drugs before the fight starts, that's something else. I guess that's on them. I tell you for sure there's going to be a gigantic asterisk on it because he did. In it. It wasn't something that was discovered, 2 years later where, somebody's interviewing somebody and they bust a drug ring and they're like, oh man, this guy's, Sugar Shane Mosley's name is on this list. Oh, and then in the conversation, 3-4 years later after it happens, then Shane Mosley, says that, what he did or what happened, right? And it's explained after the fight, right or wrong. That's something happened after the fight. This is happening before the fight, heading into the fight. And for the WBC and the WBA just to say, we stand behind him, we believe he's innocent. That's not a good tone, man. That's not a good tone. That's not a good look. And quite honestly, man, one of the worst looks about it is allowing Golden Boy to be the one to announce it. We have trace amounts. I mean, aren't they all trace amounts? What are you supposed to have? Your blood's supposed to be pure computerol. And how do you know, man? It's there, man. It's there. He tested positive for a banned substance. That's what it is. And just having the ready-made, meat excuse, that's just kind of, come on, man. Yes, come on. And we know it. The fight's going to go on. The money's going to be made, right? There's not going to be, in this clean record, maybe that's the WBA's thing on Luis Ortiz because it had happened before. But it happened now. You get a pass, you get a pass on drug cheating. What happens the first time? I think Luis Ortiz got suspended the first time. The first time he tested, he got suspended. Why isn't this dude getting suspended or having some ramifications, some fines, something has been announced the first time? And I don't have any dislike for Canelo Alvarez. I favor Canelo Alvarez to beat Gennady Golovkin, and I wouldn't doubt anything whatsoever that, somebody else is masking something or whatever, what have you, man. But this is clearly a double standard as a reply, as it applies to how Luis Ortiz's situation was handled. For the WBC and the WBA to come out and pronounce the guy's innocence is way over the top. If you listen, from what Victor Conte is saying, it's like, yeah, it could be contaminated meat. It also could be that the dude that he fought 6 months ago or 4 months ago, whenever it was, and he cycled off of it, and there's trace amounts of it because he cycled off of it, and because we know that there's clenbuterol in the meat in Mexico. Shoot, he used that. So if he wasn't able to get it out of his system, he knew he could use that excuse. He planned for the contingency. It's not like there's not, millions and millions of dollars on the line and people aren't willing to do what they got to do. And it's clean, Lance Armstrong never tested positive. He passed the fact that Lance Armstrong passed hundreds of tests. He still immediately had to fess up that he was doping the same time, man, because the money for the doping is bigger than the money for the catching. That's why I favor the world of a bank robber over the bank manager. This guy's Victor Conte's job was to figure out how to cheat those systems, how to pass those systems. Masking agents are part of it. That's why people are getting suspended for having things into their system that could be used to mask other drugs. In this case, they're allowing Clenbuterol to be a masking agent for Clenbuterol. It doesn't make sense to me, man. I mean, it makes sense to me, but it's just so blatantly hypocritical that, I mean, it's just, hey man, it really does make boxing look bad. And not that I was really, too much caring about this fight with Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. Honestly, man, there's not a lot of excitement for me around this fight. This is pretty much the most interesting thing that has happened in the fight lead up to the last fight or this fight. What I want to see is these guys all get in with the rest of the 160-pound guys. And for the people that, it's just interesting. We also had some good conversations with people on the chat line about, what type of Mexican Canelo Alvarez is. And whether if they would let, certain other Mexicans use that excuse. But, it is what it is, man. And, with that, I'm out. Peace.